Hello and welcome to the week of November 25th. So this week, we're going to be working with the vibration of the 12-3. And so we have some interesting things at play this week. We have in astrology, Mercury going retrograde. And it's interesting because Mercury, of course, rules communication, which the 3 energy is very much about communication. And so, when Mercury goes into retrograde, it can have us review, revisit, revise certain areas of, our lives, especially as it pertains to communication, right? And how we communicate. And it's interesting because with this 3 energy coming through, usually when the 3 energy comes through in a cycle, it can be really boisterous, really fast moving, a really fun type of energy. And I'm not saying this week can't be fun. I think it can be. But we have this influencing energy of the 12, right? So what's interesting, and I'm always fascinated with how much astrology and numerology correlate. Like they really do work hand in hand to offer different views, right? But it's interesting because the 12 vibration brings this influence of slowing down, of pausing, of taking your time, especially as it pertains to communication, right? So there is definitely something here where you are meant to stop, look, and listen in some area of your life, although I would say that communication, how we communicate, our messaging, how we choose to engage with one another when it comes to speaking our mind, airing our grievances, putting our messaging out into the world. There's this sort of cautionary energy with the 12-3 that says, be really mindful about the messaging, the words that you choose to use, not only with what you're putting out into the world, but when you're engaging with another person or other people. So a lot of times, especially when there's a charged energy behind, our actions, right? We can be really hasty in that messaging or the words that we choose to use. And a lot of times what can happen is we end up saying something that we regret, right? We have buyer's remorse, so to speak, right? And so this energy says, slow down, be mindful about, you can think whatever you need to think, but be very cognizant of what you allow to move through your voice, right? Through your words, whether it's the written or the spoken word, right? So because under this energy, it can likely come back to bite you in the bum. And what I mean by that, again, is going back to that charged energy, right? Like if we're in some kind of heated debate, or if someone says something that triggers us or gets our guard up, right? We can feel that charged energy, and sometimes words can be our quickest weapon, right? We have the quickest access to that. And so we can say things or write things, right, that we will soon or later regret. And this energy reminds us that we can do a lot more good by taking our time and making sure that what we're saying or what we're writing is the messaging that we want to be putting out into the world. Because, we've heard it time and time again, and numerology is, this is a big belief system within numerology. Words have power. Each letter holds power, right? So when we put those letters together, that's a lot of power coming at you. So you just want to be careful about, not careful, you want to be mindful about your wording, about your messaging. Now you can't control how someone else receives your messaging or how they choose to digest it or what they choose to do with it. But you 100% have that control and that responsibility to make sure that the words that you're putting out into the world, the messaging that you're putting out into the world are good, feel good, are doing good, right? And, I would say with this energy, it's saying, check your motive, right? Like we're meant to check our motive with this energy. Like if your motive is to sort of disarm someone with your words, to tear someone down, to oppress someone, to retaliate, to seek vengeance, right? To, be judgmental, etc., etc. If you're using those words in a negative fashion, you're going to feel that energy. And not only are you going to feel that energy, but obviously the recipient is going to feel it also. So you are putting out into the collective, out into the world, this venom that you have the power to not put out into the world, right? So it's really fascinating to me that this energy is coming up right now, especially as we enter into this Mercury retrograde, which I would also recommend that if you have an astrologer that you follow, to listen to what this Mercury retrograde could be bringing from astrology, because it's very fascinating and it's sort of along the same lines. But and that'll kind of give you a bigger vantage point of kind of the energies you're going to be working, or we're going to be working with this week. But ultimately, what it comes down to is, it's easy to be that keyboard warrior. It's easy to get into a debate and just really want to be right and not be too concerned about what you're saying to the other person so that you can be right. Meaning, words can do a lot of good and words can do a lot of damage, right? And the words and the energy behind those words, we can't take back. We cannot take back. We can't undo that damage. And so you want to be sure that, and only, each of us individually are responsible for the words and that power that we're putting out into the world. We can either use it for good or we can use it for destruction. And it was interesting because I saw something the other day, and I wish I could remember the lady who did the presentation because it was so great. And it really kind of is a great example of this. But she's a teacher and she was teaching young students, and she had a piece of paper and she held it up in front of the class, and it was a crisp, clean piece of paper, right? Brand new sheet of paper. And so she told the class to say something mean to that piece of paper, right? And so someone said, "You're ugly." And when one of the students would say something mean to the piece of paper, she would crumple it. She would crumple a side of it. And then another student would say something like, "You're stupid," or something, right, to the piece of paper. And then she would crumple that, right? And so this went on, and she crumpled the whole piece of paper, and finally she had it in a ball. And then she sort of unraveled it, right, back to where it's this flat piece of paper. But there was all of these crinkles in it, right? All of these marks, and you could see those marks within the piece of paper. And she said to the class, she said, remember how the paper was before all of those mean words, and now look at the piece of paper after those words have been spoken. And she said, this piece of paper will never go back to the way that it was. We can flatten it again, but we'll never get those creases out. We'll never get those marks out. We'll never be able to take back what we've sort of done, right? And I thought that was such a powerful message, because we all know that to be true, right? When we're younger going through school, if someone calls us a name, those words stick with you. And then that continues to build up over time as more and more people say negative things and nasty things or whatever. And, no matter what the actions are, those words stick. And, you can't ever kind of go back to where you were. You can move forward, you can heal from it, but you can't ever go back to that point where the words have not been spoken. That damage is sort of already done. And so what I love about this energy is that it's asking us to slow down, to be really thoughtful and mindful about the messaging that we are putting out, not only into the world, but to our loved ones, to ourselves, to everyone that we meet. We have a responsibility to ourselves and to others to be very mindful of the messaging, to be very mindful of the words and the energy behind the words. And this isn't, woo. This is something, we could even go back to psychology with this. But I do think it's really beautiful with this 12-3 energy that's saying, remember your own responsibility. Remember your own, take accountability for your own individual actions. And we can say, well, they said this and they're doing that, so we're going to do that. And we have the right to do that. We can retaliate. We can meet venom with venom. But this energy says we have the responsibility as individuals to do better. And if each individual chooses to do better, then we start to see better, right? Collectively, because the world doesn't change in one fell swoop. It's individual by individual by individual. And so much comes back to the words. That 3 energy is so powerful when we talk about communication and when we talk about the words. And so I love this energy this week. So, if you are traveling this week, if you're in the United States and you're getting together for family gatherings and whatnot, it doesn't matter what somebody else chooses to do with their words. You choose what you're doing with your words and make sure that that messaging feels good for you. We can either debate to be right and at what cost, or we can continue to show up in a way that feels good, that we're sharing our messaging in a way that feels good, that truly feels good. It doesn't have to be right, but it feels good. And I'm not talking about feels good like in a vindictive way. I mean, feels good energetically, right? Feels like a higher octave of this energy. Or we can choose to go to battle with our words, but nobody wins in that situation. Nobody is right in that situation. And so again, this 12-3 just says, remember that you get to choose how you engage. Remember that you get to choose, how you participate. And you get to choose your words and the energy behind those words. And you know very well what energy you're putting out into the world, right? It might feel good in that moment to shoot some venom with your words. It might feel real good in that moment, but you know that it's not going to feel good for very long, right? And the result is not going to be worth that feeling. So, interesting energy here. I mean, I love this energy. I really do. And, again, the energy can be there. It's what we choose to do with it that makes the difference. But this is such a beautiful opportunity to really, really, really slow down, to pause, to reflect, and to make sure that, again, what we put out into the world, we feel good about, no matter what anybody else is doing, because it's not about what other people are doing. It's about how we're showing up and how we're choosing to use those words. I would also say be open to more than just debating, right? Debating, again, is about, I'm right, you're wrong, let me prove this. Let me prove why I'm right. And debating, serves its purpose. But when it comes to relationships and healthy relationships and, connecting with another person, debating is not, the highest form of communication. It's not even a form of communication. It's literally about proving one side is right and the other one is wrong. Communication, which is what this 3 energy is all about, is about truly gaining a deeper understanding of the other person or the other people involved. It doesn't mean that we have to agree, but that understanding, that deeper understanding that we can only get through communication, can actually lead to finding some kind of common ground, right? That we can all work with in some way, so that we can move towards some kind of greater unity as opposed to that separation that debating usually will bring in. And again, debating is about the need to be right. Communication and conversation is really what I'm looking for here, right? The conversation. Conversations are not about debating. They're not about the need to be right. Conversations are about that need for a deeper understanding of each party, of each person. And so that 3 energy says, the foundation of communication is a conversation. That's how we get to that deeper understanding. And so, if you're going into a connection or a conversation with another person with the need to be right, then you're not having a conversation, you're debating. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth that energy? Is it worth, that charged energy so that I can be right? Right? And why is there that need to be right? So there's a lot that we can kind of explore this week. And what if you aren't right? That's one thing too. It's kind of like there's so much that goes into this. It's like, when charged emotions are involved, even when, and charged emotions can be excitement, joy, enthusiasm, anger, it doesn't have to be negative, but it can be negative or positive energy, that charged energy. But when we're moving from that place, then we don't have as much control over our messaging, right? We shoot out whatever we're thinking. And usually it's an opinion over really taking the time, again, for that deeper understanding or to actually look at the facts around the situation. So, there's an opportunity this week to take a closer look at our, ego-driven need to be right. And what is that worth? What is that truly worth? And it depends on the situation, right? And only you can answer that. But is arguing or debating really going to solve that problem, whatever it might be, the problem that's you're being posed with? So I would say again, choose your words and how you engage wisely. Listen, be flexible, be honest in how you're expressing yourself, and allow the other person to do the same, right? And you're going to see that even if it doesn't get the results that you're hoping it gets in that dynamic, you're going to feel good about it. You're going to feel, and I mean feel good, like the energy within you is going to be higher than it would be if the messaging, the wording, how you're connecting with another person is more about that debating or that arguing. It's just not going to give you the same results as it would if you are very mindful of your messaging. It is interesting also because this energy can bring up the possibility for reviewing past conversations. So you might have an opportunity to connect with someone where maybe there were some miscommunications or the lines of communication kind of got blurred, or there's just lines got crossed, right? Or those lines of communication kind of got jumbled. This could be a time for a reconnection there, to review that, to, reconnect in some way and maybe have a different conversation. Maybe approach it differently. And maybe both of you or whoever's involved are in a place where you can do that now and get different results, right? Again, being mindful of how you choose to engage and how you choose to participate in that conversation or that connection. The other thing I would say is, this goes back to that 12 energy, but also with Mercury being in retrograde, it is easy during this time to be misunderstood if you're too hasty or moving from that charged energy, right? Sometimes when we just blurt things out or we're moving from that charged energy, it's very easy to be misunderstood, right? So this 12-3 again says, slow down, right? Check yourself, check your messaging, make sure that what you're putting out there makes sense and it's what you want to be putting out there. Again, you don't have control about the other person, but you absolutely have control over what you're putting out into the world. So just make sure you take your time, double check it, and if you are in like that charged space, maybe give yourself some time before you hit send, come back to neutral, and then revisit, right? Maybe reread it, make sure that it feels good in that moment. Anytime we do something from that charged energy, we're not getting a good read on how we truly feel about it. And, sometimes that can, again, create situations that, are unnecessary and don't need to be there. Couple of quick things before I close out. There's been a lot of time on communication, but this is really at the core and the forefront of this energy this week. But some other things that might come up, this is still at the core of 3 energy. And so there is this opportunity to collaborate, to connect, to work together with another person or a group of people to share ideas, to share values, to, create something good with this energy, and create something together. Right? This is a beautiful energy for that. So if you get some kind of social invitation, if you get some kind of opportunity to collaborate, this is a beautiful time to say yes and to work through those details so that you can come up with something that works for all involved. And the potential of that and what could come from that could be quite beautiful and quite successful. It's also a social energy. So, this is a great time for, getting together with other people, having fun, doing what lights you up, connecting with your inner child, and also trying to see the inner child in others as well, right? That's really at the core of everyone. And so, when you're speaking to someone, try to see their inner child in that when you're having that conversation, and that will hopefully bring in a bit more grace in how we treat one another. And choose your joy. 3 energy is so much about joy and finding that joy and maintaining that joy, even amidst the chaos, even amidst the difficulties. When you can find your joy, that is power. That is truly power. Nobody can take that away from you. And, if somebody's being a killjoy, then remove yourself from that environment. You always have the choice in how you participate and how you engage. So if someone's taken that joy away, then remove yourself from that situation until they can show up in a healthier way. Beautiful energy this week, very powerful. And just remember, at the core of this, at the helm of this is you, right? We are at the helm of the ship. We decide the messaging we put out. We decide the words we put out, and we know what we're putting out there, right? If we're that keyboard warrior in that moment with that charged energy, we know we're doing that. There's, it's not an unconscious event. So anyway, I hope it's a great week. Thank you all so much for being here, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.